Hi everybody. So this bunch of videos is going to be on the 10 commandments of mixed family parenting and just mixed families actually. So today's topic is build teamwork in your blended family.
All right, building teamwork in your blended family. So really what we're going to hammer home today is the standard, okay? There's way too many standards in too many households that do this. Looks like a wave coming into the shore. And that's a problem for teamwork because nobody really knows what they need to be doing, correct?
Right.
So what you need is you need an environment where everybody knows what to expect. So number one on building teamwork is setting the standard. This is a standard that both you and your spouse need to agree on. Now this goes for both married and remarried families, but it typically really needs to hit home in remarried families because there's already been such a breakdown of structure from prior marriages and stepkids and exes, and there's all these other moving parts. But you've got to set the standard. So what do I mean by setting the standard? It means you have to agree on a set of rules or conditions within the house that you are going to follow together and that you're going to back up together and that you're ultimately going to enforce together.
Yeah, and the biggest thing about setting the standards is that when you're parenting the children, you cannot have one standard for one kid because they're the good kid, one standard for the strong-willed child because they're strong-willed and they're not going to listen anyways, and so on and so forth. It brings about, when you don't have a standard, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but when you don't have a standard in your family, what ends up happening is there's a lot of fighting and arguing that goes on, but then the children start to pick at each other. And we have seen that firsthand with clients that we've worked with, where one person gets special treatment because they're different and another person doesn't. And it creates anger within the family that you don't need. You've already got enough baggage. You don't need that too.
Yeah, and really what you're teaching your other kids to do is, say in the realm of kids, what you're teaching one kid is that something is okay for another kid that's not okay for them, and they're going to live to whatever standard's easiest for them. They're not going to live to the one that you set for them specifically.
Right.
So that moves us into number two, which is never move the standard. Now, let me do a little caveat to that. If there's something that if you set a standard so high that nobody can achieve it, then you need to reevaluate the standard. I didn't say change a standard. I didn't say move the standard. I said reevaluate the standard. Why is this standard so important? Okay, why must it be a standard, or is there some flexibility in it? But with that comes never move the standard. What's the standard for one kid's got to be the standard for the next kid, got to be the standard for the next kid, and more importantly, needs to be a standard for you. Mm-hmm. So you can't be a hypocrite. Can't be a hypocrite. So if you tell one kid to stay out of the cookie jar and the next kid gets into it because he's younger and just cuter, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that you're creating. You are teaching all of your kids that you don't really mean what you say and that the standard really isn't what you're trying to say it is.
And when it comes to blended family parenting, you can't have more than one standard because what it ends up doing is when you have to take back what you've already said or the standard that you've already set, it actually does more damage to your relationship with your stepchildren especially, but really all of the relationships in the household are affected when a parent sets things too high or too low. Right. You've got to make your word mean something.
Right.
How would you?
Well,
do you think?
I think Les Brown said it best, that if you set your standard too low, you'll hit it every time. So don't be afraid to set the standard higher. As an example, we own one rental property. One. Now, a lot of people on their first rental properties, they're loose on their lease.
Yes.
That is not me. Okay. But let me explain why. We have a very strict lease. Being more strict on the lease gives me more flexibility with people. Mm-hmm. Now, why do I say that? Because if it's already set and they've already signed that they understand it, but they need an allowance for something, and what I mean by allowance is they need me to bend on something a little bit, then they can approach me and I can amend the lease to meet that specific situation. But they have to approach me because they know it's right there. I can't do that without permission. But then if the lease is too loose and they're doing something I don't want them to do, that becomes a problem because now the lease isn't specific and they're going to look at me and say, doesn't say that in the lease.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's a court fight. So it's the same way by the standards that we're talking about within your home is if you don't be afraid to be a little more strict than you might want to be because it will give you the ability to be flexible. Not every time. It just means you have the ability to be flexible, the opportunity. That doesn't mean we bend it every time because when we bend it every time, really you're still dealing with a loose lease at that point.
Right. Yeah, and I love that example because it really shows that it actually brings about more trust. Mm-hmm. Your kids want you to trust them, especially as they get to be teenagers. However, if you have not taught them to be at a certain standard, all of them, everyone, no matter what, they will know what you're already going to say. It was so funny, especially when our two youngest children were still at home. Mm-hmm. The older brothers would constantly tell them, listen to mom and dad, listen to mom and dad. They know what they're talking about, right? And they got tired of hearing that because they're like, we are listening. Why are you telling us this? Because they were living to that standard. Now, we didn't really totally understand the whole principle of making sure that there was a standard, making sure it was clear to all the children and not budging on that until, our three older children were a little older. And so it was harder to teach them. Okay, so some of you are going to have kids that maybe are getting close to their teenage years when you got remarried. And that can be problematic, but let me tell you that there's lots of things that you can do to make that go a little smoother. Yeah. And all of this video is the number one most important thing you need to be doing to build that trust within your blended family.
Which brings us to number 3, living the standard. You cannot set a standard for your kids that you will not live to yourself.
No.
All right? Because they're watching you. They see the words you use, or I should say hear the words you use. They hear the words you use. They see the things you do. They see the compromises you make. And if you think for 2 seconds your 4-year-old doesn't catch that stuff, you're wrong. For us, with 5 boys, I can assure you the standard was the same from the oldest to the youngest. And the whole reason is I saw so many people who just basically got tired of parenting by the time that they got their youngest child. And then the youngest got away with all kinds of things. And I was not going to be that dad. And so I wanted to make sure that the standard was just as important to the youngest. So living the standard means that they need to see that dad does or mom does exactly what we tell them that they should be doing.
Yeah, so you can't treat your spouse like crap and then have your kids be excited to go get married. They're more often than not, you have actually created the lie in their minds that they should just go move in with somebody because that's going to be better.
Which is not.
No.
Yeah.
And a lot of these lies our culture tells us, and we, without even realizing it, we kind of go along with different things. And one of the things that I've seen a lot is with the standards. Oh, that kid has a hard time learning. That kid has a hard time sitting still. That kid is...
Yeah.
Just fill in the blank.
Well, you can't blame them. Well, no, you can blame their parents.
Yeah.
So.
Right. And, honestly... Should I say that?
Bratty, here, let me say something.
Okay.
Bratty kids in a grocery store don't have an attitude or behavioral problem. They have a parent problem.
Yes, 100%. That's kind of what I was going to say. So thanks for taking that one. But yeah, it's very important to have standards. It's very important that everyone in the household understands the standards and that they're age appropriate, because some standards, we learned the hard way. Some standards are just kind of above their age group. So you have to be really clear with yourself and with your spouse and talk through these things so that you can be the best parents that you possibly can. You're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes, okay? These aren't those things that we're talking about. We're just trying to help you to understand that it is very important to go away from our culture and what movies and TV is trying to tell us and do the right thing for your family, because your family is the most important thing on the planet while you're raising up a family. But above that, your marriage is the most important, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, I think that pretty much sums it up. We're very thankful that you're here with us, and there's going to be 9 other videos in this series, and we're just so thankful that you were here with us. So go ahead and comment below if you have any questions, comments, share this post, and please subscribe to our channel. We'd love to walk alongside you as you raise up your marriage and raise up your family. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.